uh, ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? My name is Karl Arriola. I'm the Regional Emergency Communication Coordinator for FEMA Region 5 here in the North Central States. Our region serves Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. I live in Kenosha County, southeastern Wisconsin, and I commute downtown to Chicago, and my residence is between Milwaukee and Chicago. And my call sign is Kilo Delta 9 Oscar Delta Hotel. I'm a general class. My shares call sign is November Alpha 5 Kilo Alpha. My shares Region 5 Beacon Alert Station is November X-Ray 5 X-Ray Alpha. And my FEMA Region 5 amateur call sign is Kilo Foxtrot 5 Echo Mike Alpha. My experience in amateur radio was a state trooper, retired with the Florida Highway Patrol, serving Fort Lauderdale, Miami during the hurricanes from 1986 to 2000. And then we jumped ship, and many of us went to Homeland Security to become air marshals. I did that for 8 years, and then I'm back in FEMA as of 2 years ago, and happy to be here in communications. I love communications. I have an extensive setup at my residence. I represent FEMA Region 5 and shares with my station at home and my amateur station. I'm also, I took a temporary leave, but I was NCS for the Maritime Mobile Service Network as well. So I'm happy to share my experience and my love and passion as a radio electronics nerd with y'all as I am here with FEMA. Okay, so I've been with FEMA for 2 years, and as the Disaster Emergency Communications Coordinator, we have a RECWIG. And for those who are unfamiliar with the RECWIG, post Katrina, Hurricane Katrina Emergency Reform Act that occurred in approximately 2006, Congress mandated that every region in the country have a Regional Emergency Communications Coordinator, ESF2. And the purpose of that is to build relationships, resiliency, and methods of communication planning and execution through some consultation with private industry and other federal and state and local partners during and before, during, and after disasters. So I'm very privileged to be part of that position here at Region 5 as the coordinator for FEMA. And I have my Air Force Mars call sign is Alpha Foxtrot Tango 5 Mike Kilo. That T will be coming off and going to Mike Kilo here within the next week. So having said that, I'd like to give you a presentation on some of the exercises that I've executed with the RECWIG. When I came on in 2020, our RECWIG had 82 members. We're at over 435 members now, and approximately 200 amateur radio operators are involved in our OXCOM. We have an open door policy with the RECWIG and 10 subcommittees. If you're interested in joining the RECWIG, shoot me an email. I'll provide my contact information at the end of the presentation. And even though you're not Region 5, you certainly can help in our exercises, because as you know, HF propagation and takeoff angle and departure on the transmission on whatever antenna you have, a wire, vertical, or a beam, it can pass right over the states next to me. And another state outside Region 5, Region 1, Boston, or in Portland, Oregon, or Region 10 can intercept the message and actually provide a return on wind link and shares. So having said that, we'll go on here. So in Operation Highwater was an exercise we executed about in July 27th, 28th. There was a year planning in this exercise, and this exercise is Phase B Bravo, Operation Highwater, and Phase A Alpha was Operation Frostbite. And to get you up to speed and just a quick explanation, the RECWIG, on a return of investment, we have amateur radio operators of all ages. And if we want to learn things, it's an art and science. And in doing so, we've established the fact that if we're going to learn from each other in communications and response methods and best practices, subject matter experts coming together and forming their collective opinions and ideas on what we should be doing and best practices, and building standard operating guides or standard operating procedures, if you will. We want to have it scientific, educational, and technical. So in Operation Frostbite 2 years ago, it was executed through planning last year, and we had a tabletop exercise. And that tabletop exercise was a weather phenomenon that entered Region 5 in a simulation from the National Weather Service that briefed out to give the mode and the environment of the exercise to the states in Region 5, that we had severe winter weather phenomenon, and it compromised and degraded our communications infrastructure from all means of communications: land mobile radio, high frequency, television, internet, cable, you name it, even the highway infrastructures, and public safety communications. So we did a tabletop exercise. Over 53 agencies participated in approximately 100 persons. That was a 2-day exercise. We learned a lot of lessons. The assumptions that were made from one state to another were discovered. There were opportunities for improvement, and it was transparent. No finger pointing between local and government agencies or federal agencies involved. We learned from each other, and our subcommittee co-chairs are in the process of developing some best practices from that. So then we decided, let's take a step further. Let's do Operation Highwater and make it functional. So let's test what we say we have in place. And so in Region 5, the National Weather Service on the screen, and I'm going to bring it up to share with you. Give me 1 second, I'll share the screen. Let me know if you can see it. Okay, thank you. So in this storm, the National Weather Service was coordinated. There was a lot of people involved in this coordination. I couldn't do it alone. It involved many, many people from local government, amateurs, Oxcom, Steve Waterman and his folks at Shares with the WinLink program, all the way up into ARRL and so many coordination calls to all the states, SWICs, state directors, and delegations that were going to man these radios. So the modality in the environment of this storm was a simulation where the region has already seen some ongoing snow melt, and due to a quick warm up because of the warm, they call it warm climate, the climate change going on, there is additional heavy rainfall of 2 to 4 inches as well, and thunderstorms were possible. As this weather phenomenon was coming in from the west to the east, melting snow will compound runoffs into streams and rivers. Anyone living near the various rivers throughout Region 5 and small towns, cities, and even metropolitan areas would remain aware of the potential for flooding. So we did some important updates, and the first update was for the event was a flood watch was in effect. I sent out a simulated message to all state emergency operations centers and the Oxcom and FEMA that be prepared. In about 5 days, there's going to be torrential downpour, snow melt, and flooding. And this is the weather service simulation exchange information they provided. So the snowpack remained widespread, ranging from 3 inches south to 10 inches across the Midwest. Additional thunderstorms developed near the Great Lakes. The water equivalent of current snowpacks range from 2 to 4 feet. And on the lower part of the screen, you see a snowpack on a river there. In the middle depiction, the temperatures were in the low 20s, and they were around approximately 20 degrees on Tuesday Fahrenheit. And then suddenly by Wednesday and Thursday, temperatures elevated up into the high 50s. So you can imagine in this short time frame, compounded with ice and rain, there's going to be flooding. So the heavy rainfall events on a timeline to the right in that area, our areas of impacted, were all across the Midwest. So we had injects. And so CISA and the ICTAP program, Interoperability Communications Technical Assistance Program, was assigned through SEIC contractors, and they are experts in developing exercises and doing them properly. They have a methodology that they go by. A lot of coordination calls with 3 planning meetings, separate individual planning meetings for the different states and what their responsibilities were, planning coordination with shares and amateurs. And so the time duration on this was heaviest rainfall from Tuesday night into Wednesday evening. Was there confidence? There was high confidence that would happen 1 to 3 inches storm total accumulation, slightly lower confidence in about 3 inches amounts of rain. The impacts of rivers, stream, and flooding. So that was the weather forecast and the Weather Prediction Center that was simulated on a brief out the day of this exercise and before it. So in this brief out flyer, the goal of the exercise is demonstrate communication policies, procedures, plans, and available assets and capabilities used by regional agencies in response to a significant nationwide incident. So what this is that we decided, okay, all right, states and FEMA included, FEMA's no exception, let's test what you have. We're going to do the PACE plan, primary, alternate, contingent, and emergency plan. A PACE plan is not a 10 or 20 page document. It's a document created to structuralize what are the common. So primary communications, what we're comfortable with is our cell phone and the internet and our POTS line, the common telephone for copper wire line that some of us have in our homes outside of the cable wire line that comes in over the internet. The alternate would be, okay, land mobile radio, high frequency radio. Let's go even further, satellite radio, satellite communications. And then the contingent is we're using those primarily now because our comfortable zone of typical internet and cell phone usage is lost. And then emergent communications is what's really needed because we have to share methods of communications between interagency interoperability. So the exercise objectives are here on the left. We're going to demonstrate state-to-state and EOC communication policies and procedures for information sharing and resource requests from the local to the federal level. So if a state had flooding, and this is a true area that occurred, one of the states contacted me where I was stationed at the SimCell, and I'll show you another slide deck on that with some photographs. They said that their EOC in a certain county in Michigan was flooded out. They lost communications, they lost internet. The county EOC had to go to another alternate site. There was a disaster declaration signed by the governor, and the federal emergency management agency responded with urban search and rescue, swift water rescue teams because one town was severely flooded. People were trapped. And the IMAT responded and they needed resources. So the NJEC was there. Karl, you lost internet capability and cell phone at your SimCell. What do? Well, we had satellite communications, and I actually got on a satellite with my laptop and received simulated messages of requests for aid and federal aid on behalf of certain states. The second bullet point was to demonstrate the PACE plan, as I explained. Third point, demonstrate communications and situational awareness policies, coordination with Region 5 and neighboring region states. So this established the fact that if Illinois is next door to Indiana and they had severe flooding and needed resources, state to state communications were involved. We threw injects at those states and said, okay, you can't pick up your landline and call. Half the repeaters in this part of the state are down. And what do? Okay, we have satellite. You're having trouble with the satellite because of saturation. You can't get in because of saturation. What do you have? So what are the capabilities and communications available to the states? In the next bullet point, we demonstrate and identify redundant interoperable communications capabilities in the event of a major disruption. We demonstrate and review the operable and interoperable communications available to or required by exercise participants in accordance with the existing operational procedures. And then we validate and tested those. So in the schedule events on July 27th, 2022, we had a check at 8:30 in the morning. We had an exercise briefing and we started the exercise. We had the hot wash at 1500 hours Central Time on Wednesday. Thursday, we continued with the exercise after the briefing, and we ended the exercise at approximately 1 o'clock. It went longer, and we demobilized. So here we are on this presentation. I will go to screen mode. Can you still see it? If I can get a thumbs up if you can still see the screen.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, Operation Highwater. Here we are. This is a functional exercise. On the morning of the exercise briefing. So this is what we did.
The slide didn't change.
It's not changing. Okay, hold on. Let me go back. Okay, can you see that now? Because I'll do it manually. You can't see that.
It's still on the goal page.
Okay. I'll bring it back up, gentlemen. Stand by. Can you see that? Thank you. I'm going to leave it at
Yes,
that.
yes.
I will, for the purpose of this presentation and bandwidth, I'm not going to go full screen. I'll just go with this so we see what's going on. So the functional exercise, our watch office is located in downtown Chicago. And in downtown Chicago, with temporarily installing additional satellite equipment and high frequency equipment, it was very difficult to do in our planning with the policies and procedures there. General Services Administration, they own the building. It's a federal property, and so there was a lot of detailed requirements and further planning to get an exercise at that location. So what we did is our alternate communication site is in a suburb of Illinois near Aurora. And because that site was unavailable, DuPage County Emergency Management Agency, thanks to everyone there, stepped up to the plate and they offered their facility as a location for our SIM cell. And this entire DuPage County Emergency Management Agency, we set up our SIM cell. This is the briefing room. And I'll show you some slides on what we did. On the morning exercise, Craig Dykeman, who's wearing a blue shirt and a long sleeve below the clock, he's the EMA director for DuPage County. I want to tell him sincere thanks on behalf of FEMA and myself in the RECWIG. The folks in the reflective suits are the ComMel and ComT amateur radio operators and volunteers at DuPage County EMA. And we did our briefing beforehand. So what we did is for FEMA, we brought in our L3 Hawkeye satellite and we set it up on a roof as an actual deployment in a real emergency. So let's say we had to deploy to another location in Region 5 because of a disaster. Here it would be flooding. We have a SIM cell site. We set up the satellite, the coax feed came down into the right side of the slide deck here on this slide. And that's the switch, the satellite switch. And we set up internet phones, 4 of them on a desk here. And they had the capability of hooking up to laptop computers. So this could be a partial command and control to establish communications by satellite, email, coordination, and internet communications in the event that our common primary, as I explained, internet capabilities became disabled from Earthwire. So our Fnrs, let's talk about Fnrs. On the right screen is a portable Fnrs radio, which is issued to me. It's the FEMA National Radio System. It's a designated system that has pre-designated frequencies from NTIA and FCC that the FCC is exclusive use to use this radio to communicate from FEMA regional watch centers all around the country to each state emergency operations center. It's mandated that FEMA has the capability of talking directly to our state EOCs and coordination and response efforts. The wire, I had a wire that came from the roof. As you see on the top left, it's on a tripod, and a wire antenna with the auto tuner goes all the way down to another tripod on the ground in front of the EMA. And this radio tuned, and I was able to communicate with the different state EOCs and our FEMA watch office downtown Chicago on HF frequencies. This radio was very instrumental on a to-go flyaway kit. as we talked about our communications, with high frequency radios, land mobile radios, and internet and computer and satellite, we also brought in Iridium satellite phones, the ones that we actually use out in the field. We have adapters where we can attach LMR RG8X to the satellite phone, throw the wire up the stairs, up onto the roof, and the magnetic antennas that you would see on a trunk, like a NMO mount, Motorola mount on the trunk of a car or a roof of a car, and they were posted on a tripod. So the comfort of the office building outside of inclement weather, the user or responder that's doing part of the communications at a simulated sim cell can easily pick up the phone and make satellite calls without having to step outside in inclement weather, sub-0 degree temperatures or in rain, because you have to have a clear and obstructed view to the southern sky. And it's kind of difficult to use these unless you have that clear view of the southern sky. But since we have the coax and the antennas out here, this is something that we highly recommend for other agencies to purchase, amateurs to purchase. If they do have satellite phones, get the adapters. The ones for the cars are good. You can plug in a cigarette lighter, comfort of your car, stopped at some place, and able to make a phone call and receive a phone call. But what's even neat is that you can get also desktop adapters to put in your watch office or your operation center and have the antenna outside. And some of those antenna adapters come with the Ethernet cables for computer interface to where you can use your computer through the cell connectivity. So far, are there any questions on what I've discussed so far, guys? Just take a break here for any questions. And Dan, if you can monitor the chat for me and let me know if you see any questions, that would be good, sir. Okay, moving on. All right, I'm going down here to the next one. Now, the county DuPage GMA wanted to test their own equipment too. So they had a SAT-RAD. We put an antenna on top of one of the air conditioner ducts up on the roof right here on the left. Coax going to the through the door downstairs into the sim cell where I was in the training room. And this is their satellite for the SAT-RAD. It's similar to G2M satellite, and they were able to test their communication skills as well. So when we started exercise, it was really interesting because it provided the opportunity for all COML and COMT folks on their position task books to show some knowledge, skills, and abilities with their technical skills as they routed the coax, did the installation, a little bit of ingenuity going there into the room and doing their installation techniques was really beneficial for them. And so in that aspect, at DuPage County EMA, the local comm guys, they have an iTex trailer. And this trailer that you see in the far left is pulled by a pickup truck owned by DuPage County EMA, provided by funding through the state of Illinois. And it has a pneumatic elevated tower that you can put repeater antennas on. It's got a satellite dish above, and it has internet capability, a lot of VoIP communications capability. There's a portable shares radio, amateur radio, there's aviation radio. There's a lot of cool things in this thing, and it's also air conditioned. Excuse me, turn this off. And so, having said that, they pipelined a internet capability from the trailer up to this antenna that's encircled on the left part of your screen on the tripod, and it was piped down into the EMA. And so the transmitter on the far right of your screen, it comes off the trailer, it sends a signal to the tripod that's depicted on the left, and it goes down in EMA. The purpose of this technique is to replicate the fact that this building or this response center that we took over in such a emergency response in this ESF2 function or communications exercise was to show that there is no internet capability at this location. The county wanted to show that they could set up and establish internet connection through a Wi-Fi pipeline, and that's what they did. From the antenna on the trailer on the right, coming to the receiver on the top of the roof and down inside the building and right back to the trailer as well. Interesting that this antenna has about a 3 to 5 mile burst of line of sight communication on the beam of that rectangular flat panel antenna, which is pretty cool. And going back to the front of the truck and trailer, DuPage County, they brought the truck and pulled the trailer in. They set up their comms for their testing that they want to do in parallel with the FEMA Region 5 exercise. This is where it comes really cool. At the DuPage County EMA, they have, my internet connection's unstable. Can you still hear me, folks? Okay, thank you. At DuPage County EMA, this gentleman, he is one of the COM-L volunteers and amateur radio operator. At this laptop computer is interfaced with a West Mountain radio on not a rig blaster. I can't think of the name. I've got rig blaster, but this is another device. It's an ICOM HF radio, and the power supply is stacked up with the antenna tuner, and they have shares frequencies in here. Now, shares frequency stands for shared resources. And what shares is, ladies and gentlemen, it is a program developed by CISA. It was turned over to CISA to oversee the program and the further development of it. And that NTIA FCC allocated frequencies and high frequencies, both upper and lower sideband. And these frequencies were allocated in groups for different regions of the country, regions 1 through 10. And the North channel on shares on the net plan and net channel list, the North channel has several frequencies for propagation. I can't give the frequencies over the call here, but the North channel involves all the states in Region 5, all the states in Region 7, and all the states in Region 8. And for interoperability, you have to keep in mind that when we talk about shares, it's also the telecommunications partners. If anybody on this call owned an electronics company or a electrical company or a co-op, a mother and father operation, family operation that helps and has the capability and contracting to assist in the restoration of electrical power in a power grid and has communications, that company as a private industry or a family operated company that supports subcontracting through telecommunication partners, either by T-Mobile, FirstNet, Verizon, and AT&T, to maintain tower cell sites in a certain grid, has the vested interest in interoperability communications and working with both federal, state, and local agencies. So if you're a family company, I'm going down to give you the focal point. If you're of a small company invested in the interest in contracting to help revitalize the infrastructure and you have a vested interest, you can actually apply for a call sign at shares, and your company can be listed in the directory as Great Lakes Co-op, and you can have a call sign. That call sign will give you the capability and give you the freedom to buy whatever equipment you want to put in your vehicles, your electrical co-op vehicles, the bucket trucks, or you want to put a high frequency share station at your office. But that only gives you the privilege of talking on shares frequencies. It does not give you the privilege of talking on amateur radio frequencies or other frequencies. And so in doing so, you're a private industry member that's embedded in the shares program, having a call sign. And as a company owner, you can delegate any employee in your company who has competency skills, at least, that can turn on the radio, key the mic, and coordinate where they're going to respond with their bucket trucks, who, when, and where's coming, and provide some information to expectations to federal government and other state partners. In that capability and shares in those frequencies, FAA, TSA, Department of Justice, FEMA, Forestry, I can name many others, the FBI, Army bases, Air Force bases, the military, Department of Defense. I can talk about Verizon Wireless, Argonne Laboratories, you name it. The directory has thousands of call signs and hundreds of different agencies, both federal, state, and private industry, that have the capability of talking to each other and coordinating their efforts and their responses on that shares network. So I can also tell you that as the RECWIG coordinator here in FEMA, amateur radio operators, including Dan, who had an interest to have a shares call sign, I have the ability to give you a Form 1, and you can fill it out, and I will sponsor you to have your own individual shares call sign. From the comfort of your home in deployment and helping the federal response efforts, state response efforts, and shares in your different regions, you'll have the ability to talk on these channels, participate in the nets. For example, the Shares North Net meets every day of the week, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And they do digital messages, MT63 and Olivia. They have a national net. They have a net for CW. They got alert beacon stations that broadcast messages every 30 minutes, 24/7. My station, November X-ray 5, X-ray Alpha from my home, beacons every 30 minutes, messages I receive from CISA to those who want to listen and receive these messages. They can decode them off FL Digi, and then you can pass that information to even down to the amateur radio clubs. So what I want to say is this system is so affordable, so economically valuable, pennies on a dollar. An amateur private company such as ICOM and this computer with the WinLink system software, and CISA and Homeland Security has adopted and authorized the use of that software in WinLink program to federal computer systems, state computer systems, local government computer systems. Example here on the screen, DuPage County Emergency Management Agency, a suburb of Western Chicago, has the WinLink system and the WinLink station. What is really cool, ladies and gentlemen, is that when the injects came through, when we announced that certain state EOCs lost internet, lost their cell phone, lost landline communications because of the storms in this exercise and because of the ice melts, they were able to use WinLink to pass messages from state to state, state to FEMA, and back FEMA to state through the system. And this gentleman handled several messages for us. And that's the capability. It's amazing. A 100-watt radio with a 80 LDG 600 Pro 3 or 600 Pro 2 auto tuner, the same one I have, and this HF wire broadband terminated dipole hanging about 10 feet off the roof on a two-story building was really incredible to get out like an NVIS or a broadband antenna and be able to talk to all the states. Now, what's really unique with this program and shares, the RECWIG, we have about close to 200 amateur radio operators. I'd like to convey that Max Schneider, he's our Oxcom chair of the subcommittee for Oxcom, and working with Steve Waterman. I want to thank both those gentlemen because they were very instrumental in compelling all the state EOCs in Region 5 to adopt that radio system. Yet the radios could vary from state to state, just like communications, Yaesu, Kenwood, and ICOM and whatnot, and Motorola. The equipment and the essential means of communication is the same. HF, typical standard HF radio, WinLink email with a Rig Blaster interface, and they're able to send and receive messages. And we're not talking thousands and thousands of dollars and fancy equipment. It's very fundamental. I'd like to convey that HF communications is a trend that is returning to much of the government. I know that recently in the last 20 years, we adopted a lot of voice over internet protocol. We have DMR. FEMA Region 5 has the DMR Region 5 talk group, 31673. We have a D-Star reflector for Oxcom. We have the Michigan lower sideband net on 7128. I'm sorry, 7.280. And we also have the 60-meter interoperability net. And this WinLink here, we use the 60-meter net. I coordinated with headquarters and was able to get authorization for all the states in this exercise and some of those in the amateur community to use channels 1, 2, 3, or 5 on the 5 megahertz 60-meter interoperability channel for this exercise. and it was a tremendous success, folks. The ability in sharing communications was incredible. So, and moving forward, here's a photo of the ComL folks that were involved in this. These gentlemen were very professional, nice group of amateurs, great group of guys. They're all amateur radio operators. And the far right is John Nebel, the emergency comms director at DuPage County Emergency Management. My hat's off to him for assisting FEMA and all the state EOCs and CISA program to use his facility for this functional exercise, which was a great success. And in doing so, on the next photograph here, on the far right is our regional administrator of FEMA Region 5, Mr. Thomas C. Sevick. He came in and spoke to the hands. What's really unique, ladies and gentlemen, he is also an amateur radio operator. For the life of me, I can't remember his call sign, but he's a ham. He's the former director of Cook County Emergency Management Agency in Chicago. He's certified EMA director. And we have the assistant of DuPage County EMA, one of the technical gentlemen. My best friend, who's a ham, myself here in the picture, our logistics branch chief. We have our training exercise chair, John Cheney, my supervisor, and one of the director of DuPage County EMA, Mr. Craig Dykeman. Very, very nice group of folks that were involved in this endeavor. So that's my presentation to you on exercise Operation Highwater. We all collectively came together to test the capabilities of state-to-state communication, state to FEMA, how we process the PACE plan and integrated communications, and specifically used Shares WinLink. I'm an avid supporter of Shares WinLink and Shares program. It's been instituted in every single SCOC in Region 5. We have several RMS servers that we use, and we know that those are piggybacked on the Amazon network. And there's so much to talk about. I really enjoy this hobby, and I'm happy to be part of this endeavor in communications with FEMA. And back over to you, Dan. That's my presentation. If you have any questions, go ahead and shoot them over.
Okay, good presentation. And you're right. I happen to have Shares call sign NNA0AD, and I have yet to put that on the air. I'll have to get with Steve to make that happen with WinLink.
Sure. If I'll put in the chat. Let's see here. We have made up several 90-meter internet cables and surplus military field phone wire DR8 using RL39 de-reeling kit. Interesting. Thank you for that. And Victor, satellite DuPage, was it intended to be utilized at the downtown Chicago site, or was this used DuPage just a matter of readiness and adaptability? Good question. It was intended to be utilized at the DuPage EMA to simulate a remote alternate transmission site because downtown Chicago has limitations with the structure of the building and policies and procedures. So we wanted to simulate offsite in another alternate location. Our alternate site is under construction and it's being remodeled right now. That was not available. If it was, we'd be there. But DuPage said, "Hey, come over us and let's exercise at our location," which is nice. You are the youngest in the picks. Thanks, Steve. I feel young, but I don't know if I look that young. And do the Shares WinLink stations use Packer mode?
Your hair is gray, but at least you have it on your head.
Knock on wood. Right now, today I do. Shares WinLink PSAs use Packer modems. Yes, they do use Packer modems. Steve can elaborate on that. On the question in the chat from Ki Oscar Kilo Yankee, I believe Steve said, and or Vera FM sound card modems. Steve, if you can elaborate on that one.
Okay. Well, essentially, there's no limit to the baud rate and speed that is applicable to a Shares data station. The voice nets use a broadcast or point to multipoint forward error correction mode, such as MT63 or M110 alpha, which is an old fashioned obsolete STNAG protocol that does not have point to point ARQ capability. And they also use Olivia and other broadcast modes, but that's not data transfer. That's not point-to-point communication. For point-to-point communication, which is way above the speed limit that we're talking about on these conversational FEC broadcast modes, the most efficient and effective of those is Pactor 4 and the Vera protocol. Agencies, major agencies, are not interested in Vera because it deploys a sound card, which introduces some complexity when you're using type accepted radios with a balanced audio input. So because of that, and because of the multi-use that agencies provide, such as their own FCC OpSecure frequencies and National Guard NTI frequencies and other frequencies that are imposed upon them where they must use a Part 90 type accepted equipment, Vera is not accepted yet. Also, frankly, the WinLink development team is working, or the WinLink board is working very diligently with the author in order to get that source code in escrow, because it's owned by one young individual who comes out of Spain. And that's not where you want to put life and property unless you have some assurances that it's going to be there when it's needed. So those two modes, one of them is an orthogonal frequency division multiplex mode, which has many tones divided into 100 watts. And the other is a protocol that's much more robust, that does not have as many tones divided into 100 watts. And that's Pactor 4. Pactor 4 is similar to the ITU or the government's STNAG protocols, but it does not have the huge overhead of TCP/IP mixed in with it. So Pactor 4 has been really adopted out of necessity, and it is the mode utilized on shares. All the radio message servers utilize Pactor 4. An end user may use Pactor 3, but I would advise any end user that gets involved with shares should do so, and also be highly involved with their nearby agency, at whatever level agency they get involved with, whether it's a government agency or a non-government critical infrastructure partner like a hospital, because in many, many exercises and in many, many actual events, the FEMA national system is not involved until they are brought in by a state or state government, because the state government needs more resources. But that doesn't apply to every and all exercises. So in order to really understand how what Karl's talking about, and to understand how the mentality of these people, of the agencies, I would definitely recommend that you get involved with taking the 4 courses, the 4 FEMA courses, 100, 200, 700, and 800 online, and get some education about how things work. And then I would move forward. And I highly recommend that you stick with Karl if he's going to sponsor you, because Karl has real life use for this. And he's illustrated that twice now with two different type of exercises, each one a little bit more complex than the next. I'm looking forward to a full-scale actual exercise from Karl coming up in the future at some point, where people can actually get out and perform literally instead of virtually. And,
Yes, sir, Steve.
yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Thank you for saying that, because you and I have talked extensively in our position with the amateur community and effective the shares platform is useful in complementing the amateur community and complementing government responses and their efforts, because the RECWIG is there to acquire the best practices and subject matter expert and expertise from society, from our citizens, not just from the contractors. It's for those that are out there that have hands-on from their knowledge, skills, and abilities. And there's a lot of hams around the country that have just that capability. And also with the equipment, because they spent thousands of dollars over the years. I mean, for me being a ham, I've invested over $30,000 in amateur equipment since 1995 here in my home. But set aside, the reason why I'm explaining this to the folks on the call, you and I have talked about doing a shares amateur WinLink exclusive exercise to show the GIS component, the graphical component and reporting that I would like to do an executed one with you coming this fall. So I would be interested in having one completed before the end of the year with you on amateur WinLink and using the GIS simulated components. And I think we can definitely make that possible. It's not too late in the year to plan for that. Back to you, sir.
That's thank you very much for that. And one of the beauties of amateur radio is that they're everywhere. And one of the advantages of being everywhere is you don't have to know a lot about the National Incident Management System or anything else in order to fill out a report about the situation as you see it in your local area, and provide that situational awareness to whoever needs it that is actually involved in an exercise. So that's a great way to begin getting interested and begin working in emergency communications and satisfying that aspect of amateur radio and letting society see that we're everywhere.
Absolutely, Steve. Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
The only thing I would emphasize again is to get involved with your local agency, whatever it may be, so that you understand where they're coming from, and so that they know who you are and what your capabilities are if and when they need you. And being attached at the umbilical cord with the likes of Karl will certainly can't hurt that option. So putting both ends of that together is a real advantage up there in Region 5.
Absolutely, Steve. I mean, for some amateurs, to reiterate, well, I live in Houston, Texas, or I live in Tennessee, and near Nashville, or I am near the Ozarks. How can I support Region 5? I'm not part of Region 5. Well, being an asset and having ears, radio ears, and the ability to communicate and send messages and intercept that communications platform and provide the resource to augment the messaging capabilities is very crucial. And it's very valuable because signals go right over my head. Minnesota, Region 5 can send a message to Chicago and it goes right over my head. I never hear it. Chicago never hears it.
Wait a minute. I understood that Region 5 signals only went to the edge of Region 5 and then disappeared.
Yeah, that's if you're QRP. Absolutely. QRP is the best method. But yeah, and so Dan, in Idaho on the call, he's a great resources to intercept and be a relay station. That's the magic word I always wanted to say. You can be a valuable relay station when others can't hear. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, the one last thing. RF and the radio propagation does not have FEMA or state or local boundaries. So if you have a problem in one of your regions, you're not going to have an RMS in that region. You're going to depend on people in Idaho and Washington and California and anywhere else that the disaster is not. So that's why they call this a shared system, a shared resource system, because the place where the servers are not is the place where the 90% of the disaster is going to occur. And that bridge to that HF bridge to the internet, regardless of how we label it, amateur radio, shares, Fnrs, whatever, that bridge to the internet is critical during an emergency for communication purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Karl, have you been watching the chat?
Yes, a little bit. Thanks, Karl. Looking for, I got some direct messages here. Go ahead. If you can if you can fill me in, sir.
Okay, let's pick, Dan has got his hand up. Let's pick him up here real quick. Dan, go ahead.
Actually, it's a question for you. Are you aware that chat is disabled at the moment?
No. I've been watching it. It's going like crazy.
Huh. Well,
In fact,
Looking here.
I guess I'm special.
Yeah, I see where you put a question.
Your chat showed up.
There, I'm looking at chat. I was in the middle of typing a question, and all of a
Karl
sudden,
answered you too.
no, not that question. It was something else about
Okay.
using the map capabilities for accumulating sort of useful supportive data about what the amateur radio service can do by participating with WinLink as a collateral capability for shares, as well as providing direct support for shares where that makes sense. In other words,
Karl answered you, Dan.
no,
Did you
I
see his
understand
hand
that. This is a completely different question. When you
Oh,
look
okay.
when you look at the capabilities of the new mapping-GIS facilitated templates, you can accumulate all kinds of supporting information to display the kinds of activities and the amount of data actually transferred around just to garner support for the amateur radio service, independently of what it can do as, eyes and ears for shares transparently via the sharing a common CMS.
Absolutely. If I can respond to that, Dan.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. To Dan, sorry. Whiskey Lima 7, Charlie, Oscar. I got it
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey,
Whiskey
Dan.
Lima 7, Charlie.
Oh, there you go. Hey, Dan, there's two components to that question. For the amateur community, they certainly can use WinLink and they certainly can use WinLink and the templates within the WinLink system and sending templates of the messages like you just said, drop-down menus to report weather, to report situation awareness, to report highways and their infrastructure in the local towns. The WinLink messages has templates that are drop-down menus for the amateur to use. That amateur can disseminate that information over the amateur radio frequencies, and we have amateur gateways assigned with the WinLink system and the RMS servers dedicated to the amateur component. So on that vehicle, on the amateur side, the amateurs have an incredible ability to assist, even maximize their potential interventions and their methods of communications to augment government responses. So the amateurs have that capability. In shares, amateurs can acquire a shares call sign and use the shares frequency with the WinLink platform, just as they would do with the drop-down menus on the amateur side. What's unique is how we tie those together. And I wish there were more methods in the radio spectrum, but currently the 60-meter frequencies on 5 megahertz allow federal government and amateurs to talk on those channels that can use shares and amateurs on those frequencies, and outside of voice, they can use the WinLink as well there. So it's twofold. Amateurs have the ability to use WinLink and GIS component reporting methodologies that can be produced to show depictions of graphics and certain information on a tactical review, and so does a shares component. But when the 60-meter net is activated, they can come together and talk to each other outside the amateur and shares spectrum alone, which is unique. How do we blend those together? How do we get the shares operator? How do we get the federal agency to talk to the amateurs? 60-meter net, the 60-meter 5 megahertz capability. Now, I got to tell you, if anybody understands propagation, 5 megahertz is not the answer. We need to have interoperability frequencies at 40 meters, because if you go look at the propagation maps, currently 40 meters and 20 meters are generally pretty good. 80 meters, it's there. But we need to have, this is Karl talking, we need to have interoperability choices that are available in the 40 meter, the 20 meter, and the even 10 meter, depending on propagation. But we need more choices, just as hams have more choices in their frequency spectrum, and shares has more choices in their propagations. Interoperability needs to be more choices than just 5 megahertz. That's me talking.
Use WinLink.
Yes, there you go. WinLinks is another name of the game. I hope I answered your question, Dan.
Well, I didn't ask it very well, but you pointed out what is appropriate for this forum.
Okay.
So
It's somebody at some point of time could write a request for a notice of proposal for rulemaking to add additional spectrum, because 5 megahertz is going to be absorbed pretty soon, just like 3 is now. As we move higher and higher into the maximum usable frequencies, as our propagation on that 11-year cycle, which we're way ahead of predictions, but as it moves up, the lower frequencies get absorbed, they die. And 5 megahertz is right on the edge now. And it would be, I know that there would be a tremendous amount of support from several federal agencies, probably FEMA, CISA, and some others, and also with the amateur community. If some organization who doesn't want to mind getting clobbered with negative comments would put together a request for notice of proposal for rulemaking to the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, requesting something like 8 or 9 megahertz, or perhaps 11 megahertz, anywhere up there that could be usable, anywhere from 500 to 2,000 miles. That's another option that's available if somebody wants to take the time and trouble to learn how to do that. If you're an attorney or one, they love to get these things from attorney with lots of whereas and therefores and where art thou and what have you. And that would most likely be read and considered. And I think you'd also get support from another portion of the FCC that would agree with the importance of that. So I just thought I'd throw that out there.
That's a very good comment. We need to re-entertain the ability of interoperability on the high frequency spectrum to more options. And Dan, Barry Porter has a nice posting comment there for you.
Okay, as you speak, if you have video, I appreciate you leave it on, because afterwards, when people watch this on YouTube and such, it looks a whole lot better than a blank screen. Okay, are there any more questions? How are we doing in the question period?
We're good.
I don't see any more hands up.
Thank you some stuff on in chat.
You broke up there, Barry. Say again.
I sent Steve some. I sent to everybody. And something to Steve also.
Okay, I don't know why you're breaking up. Victor's got his hand up. Victor, go ahead.
Thank you for that last comment about FCC and the activism. I find too many operators who refuse to believe that participation in a governmental political sense is important, but when our bandwidth is threatened all across the board, we do need to step up. So that's impressive. Thank you very much.
Okay, and again, I'd like to remind people, if you have video, when you come on the talk, please turn your video on. It looks a lot better on the follow-up. YouTube shows the answer. How we doing, Barry?
We're good.
I don't see any more hands up. Okay, Carl, you got anything more?
Hi, Dan. Thank you for asking. For the folks on the call, Karl here, Arriola with FEMA Region 5. I'm the Regional Emergency Communications Coordinator, Kilo Delta 9 Oscar Delta Hotel. If you're interested in becoming a member of the Region 5 RECWIG and part of the OXCOM committee, we meet once a month, last Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. virtually, and we look forward to having you. If you're a ham in good standing, we welcome you. We have an open door policy, and your knowledge and capabilities is very important to the group, and we're all in this collective effort together and assisting humanity and the welfare of others through our communications capabilities. And thank you for that, Dan. Back to you. And I see another gentleman have his hand up.
Yes, Mr. Dan is up, is on again.
Yeah, thank you. So while I have Karl and Steve in the same forum, let's talk about the Form 1 that requires a local entity signature as well as a site or SysOp signature. How are you working that in different regions?
Let me
Karl?
ask you that. Let me ask you that. Answer that. The point of entity is the agency that is signing a non-disclosure. That's all it is, and giving them some information about what it is that their intent is for the use of shares broadly. The point of contact is for a station's equipment at its location. It's not for an individual. So no individual has a shares call sign or license. The shares system is sort of like your public safety. You get assigned a unit, you get assigned a frequency and a license for public safety. And then the agency assigns unit numbers to whoever they want to assign them to. The FCC doesn't take care who they are or what the unit numbers look like. They just know that the agency is responsible and signs that same type of a document that the point of entity signs. So wherever you are, you may, when you look at TSA with 120 locations, they got one point of entity, and that's somebody who signs for all of the locations and the equipment in those 120 locations. Each location, there's a name for a point of contact who's responsible for that equipment at that location. Does that help?
No. Uh, I mean, I hear exactly what you said, and I understand it as a retired 37-year federal bureaucrat. That form has more challenges than just this one. But
Well,
the only important
form.
one,
It's
the only-
20 years old. And there's a lot of things on that form that don't make any sense. And, you know, anybody that wants to fill out that form, if they can get in touch with me, I'll give them an example of how to fill it out, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. You're correct, because a lot of what's on that form is no longer utilized.
That's correct, Steve. And Dan, to answer your question, when an amateur radio operator in the RECWIG approaches me and they would like to become having the privilege of obtaining a call sign, I give them the form 1 and I'll walk them through it on how to fill it out. It'll ask for government cell phone, and if you're a volunteer or retiree, you're not going to have one. So to indicate your home phone number and your home address and your existing amateur call sign is fine. Your capabilities are fine. Then I'll sign it electronically as the FEMA coordinator, and I email it to Shares program office, and I copy you in the email, and then you'll get your call sign, and that's a privilege of having that assigned to you. And like Steve said, if you have a concern on how to fill it out, we can do it together over the phone. And once you fill it out, you email it to me in a PDF. I'll make sure that it's filled out correctly. And some things on the form are not applicable, as Steve said, but it's very easy. We can knock it out in 5 minutes. I'll sign it on my end. I'll save it in my files and forward it to Shares. And it takes about 10 days, 10 to 14 business days. And then I'll provide you a link on the Shares website on how to get the nets, their frequencies, their times, and a directory of national call signs in the program and agencies that are involved. So you'll know who's involved in your area, and in your area of California in Region 9, when your nets meet up on certain dates and time and participate and receive messages on the WinLink system, as well as MT63 or Olivia or the FL Digi system on that software, if that helps you out there, sir.
Yes, I mean, that I understand that, and may end up taking advantage of it. I'm hoping that our local sheriff's office will learn enough to appreciate the fact that they have access to someone who can help them set up their system, as well as perhaps do more by providing what might be a traffic leveraging gateway.
Right. And the
Just
best
a few miles away from.
the best practice I know of, okay, is if you approach an agency and want to be the point of contact to compel the agency to adopt the Shares WinLink system, give them a couple examples of area agencies that do use it and bring them along and have them accompany you and give examples of intervention where they actually used WinLink, they actually used Shares, and they were able to pass information that was very beneficial. And then also address the concept that it's financially feasible, pennies on a dollar. And by having an example of another similar agency or law enforcement agency in California that can help you would be great. I'm a retired trooper in law enforcement. Law enforcement tend to stay with each other. We tend to not share much information unless it's other law enforcement agencies. It's the nature of the beast. But if you can get another cop to talk to another cop and show how beneficial this program is, you'll be much more successful.
And I think there may be a route there through Yosemite National Park.
Are we still being recorded?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Good enough. Thanks, gentlemen. I probably went too far on that.
I
Okay,
might add that Cal OAS has got that pretty well in hand. If your county is one that applied and received the grant.
And that is the case, but they still haven't got a clue what it is.
Well, they will get that, you gotta give that a little time.
Yeah, okay.
That involves money.
Unfortunately, my primary contact was the OES director, and we had this little fire, and his house was one of the first to go. So this is, if it was on his mind, it isn't any longer.
Okay, Dan, I wish you wouldn't use that laptop camera because it's making me seasick trying to keep up with it.
Well, this is a field expedient exigent use on a different laptop. I'll try hard not to do it again.
Okay, because you're all over the screen as you rock and move. Okay, is there anything more? Nothing in chat?
I
Nothing?
want to thank Karl for taking the time to do this to a small but important audience. And thank you for representing volunteer resources and making them important in your own region. And that's permeating elsewhere, as you know, and we really appreciate that.
You're welcome, Steve. Thank you very much for allowing me the privilege to speak in front of you folks. And thank you so much with all your help with Dan and the CISA folks at Shares, Steve. You've been a tremendous help in assisting me to obtain the level where I'm at now. Thank you.
Okay, with that, unless we got some more questions, or how we doing in chat? Do we get everything, Barry?
We're good.
Okay,
And thank you, Karl, for coming tonight. That was very interesting.
it was.
You're welcome, sir.
Information. Okay, 73 is everybody, and I'll see you next go around.
Stay safe,
Night
everybody.
all.
Good to see everybody.